A tech romance that's only getting stronger. The U.S. state of Arizona and Taiwan agree to boost their partnership. Nurses take to the streets to protest low pay, long hours, and poor working conditions. Concerns grow that Coast Guard members could be using Chinese internet signals while stationed on an outlying island. Plus,
I'm Rick Love for TaiwanPlus here on Orchid Island, and I've got a report for you on how an influx of tourists is impacting local island life.
a warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Erica Liu. Taiwan and the U.S. are doubling down on their partnerships in tech. For the first time, the city of Phoenix, Arizona has signed an MOU with an ecosystem of Taiwanese startups to help them set up shop in one of U.S.'s hottest growing tech zones. Joyce Zeng has more.
Leaders from Taiwan and the U.S. state of Arizona fittingly signed an electronic agreement to boost tech ties and partnerships in innovation. The Memorandum of Understanding spells out a reinforced commitment to bring over more Taiwanese startups to the state's capital, Phoenix, with Arizona's Senator Mark Kelly traveling to Taipei to show his support for the partnership.
Closer economic ties between the United States and Taiwan is good for the United States, and it's good for Taiwan. This is going to help drive more investment into these critical industries, both in Arizona and in Taiwan.
Phoenix, Arizona has become a household name in Taiwan since the country's chip giant and world's leading contract chip maker, TSMC, put in its largest investment to date there. That move, along with other high-profile investments from chip heavyweights like Intel, is set to attract several other firms along the supply chain into Phoenix. That means the area's demand for tech entrepreneurs will only keep growing.
如果再加上美国台湾是台湾新创最重要的这个重要市场，因此呢，这一次配合台积电的到美国去设厂的一些契机啊。
Taiwan's been producing the world's most advanced chips and has been ranked top 5 globally for innovation capability for 2 consecutive years by the World Economic Forum. As Washington moves to keep its tech resources and know-how within its borders amidst a battle for global tech supremacy against Beijing, the U.S. has been doubling down on its key partnerships, which includes Taiwan and its leading tech firm, TSMC. But that hasn't come without its challenges. TSMC has already delayed its highly anticipated $40 billion fab there, citing a shortage of skilled labor. Speaking to TaiwanPlus after the MOU event, the president of Phoenix's Economic Council, Chris Camacho, said he's sure these issues can be quickly resolved.
Yeah, we're continuing to work with our community college systems, our labor unions, to ensure that there's alignment and communication with TSMC and the labor force. And we're very confident that we're going to be able to meet TSMC's schedule going forward.
With several eyes on Arizona to see how a growing list of global collaborations will play out, entrepreneurs in Taiwan can look forward to more ways to join the growing tech hotspot and fuel innovation. Justin Wu, Joseph Wu, and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan has been facing a nursing shortage. Faced with low pay and poor working conditions, many have begun looking elsewhere. A union representing Taiwan's nurses took to the streets Friday to bring attention to their situation. TaiwanPlus's Bing Wang was there.
Taiwan's Nurses Union is here at the legislature in the capital city of Taipei, calling for better wages, better working conditions, and better ratios between patients and nurses. Right now, the ratio is 1 nurse to 15 patients. Taiwan has around 185,000 nurses, and during the COVID-19 pandemic, they were forced to work long shifts in hazardous conditions for low pay. That extended work schedule without a pay rise has continued post-pandemic. The Nurses Union says around 2,000 nurses have quit this year, leaving others already overworked to pick up the slack, driving morale down even further.
我们政府并没有实质的去做出了这样的一个改善，而且这次开会之后还告诉我们是这样的人数，所以我们非常无法接受，所以我们今天大家就是站出来。
According to the union, each year Taiwan sees around 9,000 nursing graduates. But hearing about the poor working conditions and low pay, only about 4,000 to 5,000 actually go on to become nurses.
对我们护理人员非常非常的不友善。我之前大夜班的时候，有1比甚至1比25，一个护理人员要照顾1比25个病人。
Nurses here have protested frequently, trying to draw attention to the labor conditions of healthcare workers. Unions have also asked the health ministry to provide higher wages for new nurses, but to no avail so far. Nurses who want to start families often quit because of the inflexible shift schedules. Taiwan's health ministry says it is helping hospitals improve working conditions and is even offering monetary rewards for those who stay in the profession. But unless there's any drastic changes, the union says Taiwan's nursing shortage will only continue to get worse. Alice Chen and Bing Wang in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
As Taiwan's nurses and other healthcare workers leave their jobs, one clinic in New Taipei is beating burnout by bringing in a 4-day week. Stash Butler reports.
Across clinics and hospitals in Taiwan, nurses are handing in their notice. They say they're overworked and underpaid. For this clinic in New Taipei, the remedy was simple. Keep pay the same and cut work to just 4 days a week or 18 days a month instead of 23.
我们把所有的工作量集中在18天来做，我们的目标是1个月能够做到520个肠胃镜，我们还是7月还是做到了。
The clinic began its new work regime last month. Nurses say with more rest, they're able to provide better care.
工作跟生活是都要并重的，所以我觉得说，把工作集中之后，事实上我们效率也会提升，
可以有充分的休息的时间。 然后也可以让我多陪陪我的家人，还有因为我有小孩。
It's the latest move amid growing calls for Taiwan to shift away from its culture of long work hours and overtime, something campaigners say is long overdue.
As a bastion of democracy, Taiwan needs to take the lead in terms of showing how it can treat workers and labor human rights in a way that allows them to live decently.
So far, the government has resisted petitions to cut down the 5-day work week. It says doing so would worsen Taiwan's labour shortages. But this pioneering clinic hopes to prove the opposite is true. Medical facilities can hold on to their nurses, give them more time off, and offer patients better care. Leon Lian, Stash Butler for TaiwanPlus.
No charges will be brought against a Chinese couple accused of operating a spy ring in Taiwan. The Taiwan High Prosecutor's Office upheld a decision not to indict Chinese national Xiang Xing and his wife due to a lack of evidence. However, the couple are still barred from leaving Taiwan pending the result of a money laundering case. The pair were named by self-confessed Chinese spy Wang Liqiang, who made a series of claims on Australian television more than 3 years ago. Australia's security services later determined that Wang's story was not credible, and his bid for asylum there was dismissed. Taiwan's internet regulator is pledging better online access on the country's remote Taipei Island. That's after claims Coast Guard personnel stationed there are using Chinese signals, triggering national security concerns. Jaime has this story.
This is Taipei Island, also known as Itu Aba. It's a tiny isle in the volatile South China Sea, governed by Taiwan but claimed by China, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Here, over 1,000 kilometers from Taiwan's mainland, Taiwanese phone signals are weak. Though the island has 3 and 4G service via satellite, almost all the bandwidth goes to military equipment. There's little left over for the Coast Guard personnel stationed here, leading to claims some turn on roaming and use the stronger Chinese signals to go online. The Taiwan State Building Party has gone public with what they say is a testimony from one of these Coast Guard members. The Coast Guard says no one has to use roaming, but this recording has drawn attention to the island's poor reception and the security threat this poses, given China's claim to the whole of the South China Sea. Taiwan's internet regulator says it will urge Taiwanese carrier Zhonghua Telecom to improve service there, with more bandwidth and better infrastructure.
为提供驻岛的同仁更便捷的网络通讯服务，海巡署将持续与数位发展部、国家通讯传播委员会以及中华电信共同研议网络服务提升的方案。
But it's unclear how soon this could happen, meaning this Taiwanese outpost in the South China Sea could still have limited connection to the outside world for some time. Joseph Wu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Chinese property giant Evergrande has filed for bankruptcy protection in the U.S. in the latest sign of China's real estate crisis. The move protects the company's assets in the U.S. while it restructures its debts. Evergrande is believed to owe creditors more than $300 billion US. It's the latest sign of trouble in the world's second largest economy. China's central bank recently cut interest rates in a bid to boost spending. A poll in the United States finds that half of people surveyed think the country should help Taiwan with military equipment, but there's less support for sending troops to Taiwan if China attacks. The Reuters Ipsos poll was conducted earlier this week. It found 50% of Americans support aiding Taiwan with military equipment to help deter an attack from China. 28% oppose it. But Americans appear split on whether they favor deploying U.S. troops to the island nation. 38% of those surveyed support this measure, while 42% oppose it. Taiwan has issued more than 13,000 permits under a scheme to retain migrant workers. Since April last year, employers can apply to allow their migrant workers to stay in Taiwan indefinitely if they fulfill certain requirements. Those include having a degree from a school in Taiwan and at least 6 years of residency in the country. There are more than 800,000 migrant workers in Taiwan, mostly from Southeast Asia. Most work in social welfare and manufacturing, but are not afforded the same rights as other Taiwan residents. Taiwan's outlying Orchid Island has seen a large jump in tourists in the last few years. But as Rick Lau reports, the local community is now struggling to balance development with protecting the environment and local culture.
"41-year-old hotel owner Xiara Run is completing work on his third property. An Indigenous Dawu native of Orchid Island, he returned here after more than a decade on Taiwan's main island and has not regretted his decision to come home.
每个人都是为自己，但是你要花一点点时间给你这块土地，给你的文化。
Tourism is booming here, reversing a trend of young people leaving the small remote island in search of opportunities on Taiwan's main island. But the thriving industry is also causing conflict. Orchid Island is home to just 5,000 people, but the number of visitors arriving by plane and by boat has soared in recent years. The latest figures seeing more than 200,000 tourists in just 1 year, putting a strain on local island life. Hotels and restaurants are replacing farms and grasslands, and tourism is impacting local ecosystems like coral reefs and turtle nests. It's also affecting the way of life of the island's indigenous community. The Dawu have lived close to nature for centuries, growing taro and catching flying fish in the lagoons. As tourism booms, they're concerned their customs will disappear.
那我希望就是说，我们的文化跟观光是并行的，因为观光来的游客就是要看我们的文化。 风景每个地方风景都很漂亮，但是如果没有文化的话，变成没有价值。
一个人协会。
Grocery store owner Ao Wen built this museum from discarded plastic bottles. Open to the public, it's meant to demonstrate how the island is struggling to deal with the sheer amount of trash brought on by the rise in tourists.
部分的游客几乎。 他们不知道兰屿这边的垃圾困境，因为他们总觉得，就是我们买个饮料，然后买饮料之后就会拿到回收。
It's a delicate balancing act for the local community, as the island reaps the economic benefits of a rise in tourists while striving to maintain the culture that makes Orchid Island unique. Devin Tai and Rick Lowett on Orchid Island for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break.
We're at Fancy Frontier Anime Convention and people are excited.
For more stories from here in the outlying islands of Matsu and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app.
In the face of adversity,
the power of truth.
A roadmap for a just and open world. Charted by the freest country in Asia.
5, 4, 3, 2.
A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Ian Kavat. Taiwanese semiconductor giant TSMC.
Public buses to be electric by 2030. A mission that begins with listening.
And telling the stories of Taiwan.
In Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Drawing insight from original thinkers.
And sharing it with the world. TaiwanPlus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Naval vessels from Russia and China have been conducting joint operations in the Pacific Ocean and East China Sea. That's according to a statement from the Russian Defense Ministry. On Thursday, Japan's government reported 11 Chinese and Russian naval ships passing between the southern Japanese islands of Okinawa and Miyako. The Russian Defense Ministry said Russian and Chinese ships were jointly patrolling the Pacific and carrying out naval exercises in the East China Sea. Leaders from the U.S., Japan, and South Korea are set to meet at Camp David in the U.S. for their first ever trilateral summit. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and Japanese Prime Minister Kishida Fumio are on their way to the U.S. state of Maryland for talks that will focus on security. The leaders plan to meet with U.S. President Joe Biden and will focus on establishing joint military exercises. They're also expected to discuss establishing an emergency hotline. The cooperation between the three countries comes amid growing security threats from China and North Korea. For more on this, our reporter Jaime Ocon spoke to Riley Walters, an analyst from the Hudson Institute based in Washington, D.C.
From my understanding, this is the first dedicated trilateral meeting between the U.S., Japan, and South Korea. How significant is that?
What's really significant about this is it is purely the United States, Japan, and South Korea in the room on this one. And the big issues for them, North Korea has been and will continue to be traditionally the number one security concern for South Korea and Japan. But there is probably going to be a good amount of dialogue on China, on what it means to not just deter North Korean aggression, but the growing belligerence of Beijing in the Indo-Pacific, and what greater role that the three of us can do together.
Going forward, how big of a factor are these security threats?
I mean, the Japanese, since last year in their national security strategy, have highlighted how the security environment of the Indo-Pacific is probably the gravest it's ever been since World War II, which is pretty significant. And the Yoon administration, President Moon himself, even before coming into office, has talked about the threat that China presents to the region. Of course, North Korea, again, is their number one issue.
Aside from the summit, there's also plans to create a joint hotline to communicate in the event of emergencies. And there's also plans to establish trilateral exercises that will happen every year. How significant is that?
I think the military exercises in particular will be worth investing in. It's great that they can really lock these in now so that this momentum can continue into the next administration. The hotline is great as well, but as we've seen with the Chinese, sometimes people don't always pick up their hotlines. So it is important. South Korean officials and Japanese officials will talk, but I think the exercises really help solidify a step beyond that. It helps integrate our forces much better in the event that there ever is a contingency. The hotline is really great, though, for sharing current information and making sure that there isn't any miscommunication.
That was Riley Walters, a security analyst with the Hudson Institute based in Washington, D.C. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was inspected farmlands affected by Typhoon Kanun. The North Korean state broadcaster aired photos of Kim in a white suit in rice fields and watching aircraft spraying crops. His tour comes amid mounting concerns of a food crisis in the country. Typhoon Kanun hit the Korean peninsula last week. North Korea is already suffering food shortages because of a drop last year in agricultural production. That was also due in part to a typhoon. Taiwan's southern city of Kaohsiung is repairing damage caused by heavy rains and flooding. Continuous rainfall brought floods to several areas of the city on Thursday. Some roads were left 40 centimeters underwater. The flooding damaged road surfaces, properties, and vehicles, and covered various areas in mud. The local government has said it will review the city's rainwater drainage system. A new offshore wind power operation and maintenance center is due to open by the end of next year. As Joyce Sung reports, it's a milestone for Taiwan's net zero emission goals.
This 3D mock-up shows what will soon become Taiwan's first net zero emission building. It's an offshore wind power and maintenance center, an initiative led by state-owned energy supplier Taipower. Taiwan wants to hit net zero by 2050, which means taking out as much greenhouse gases as is being put into the air. It's an ambitious goal, considering the country's main sources of energy are imported natural gas and coal. But slowly and surely, the focus is shifting onto sources of renewable energy, like wind power, where sites like this new offshore center will come into play.
让台湾走向近邻是一个全民，是一个各部门一体共同努力协作的一个工作。
The island nation benefits from ideal conditions for harnessing offshore wind and turning it into electricity. Earlier this year, Taiwan opened its third offshore wind farm, which is capable of powering nearly 400,000 homes. 70% of the country's wind power comes from here, central Zhanghua County on the western coast of the island. That's also where this new center is being built. In the future, components from offshore wind farms that need fixing will come here for repairs.
彰化这一带的风力发电是全世界10大风场之一。那上天给我们这么好的祝福，我们如果没有好好的天助自助来发展这一个风力发电，那我们真的是暴殄天物了哈。所以我们大家一起努力。
Over $20 million have gone into the planned 7,000 square meter site, and it's expected to be operational by the end of 2024. And its designers are confident that it will not only elevate Zhanghua's position as a leader in wind power, but also help bring the country closer to its ambitious net zero goals. Howard Zhang and Joyce Sin for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's fishing agency is banning the capture and sale of female buried crabs as part of a larger effort to protect the animal. Jaime Ocon reports.
With a click of this plastic gun, these crabs are now safe. The tags are part of Taiwan's fishing agency's efforts to tackle the overfishing of crabs like these, females full of eggs, which are called buried crabs. Now their capture and sale has been banned until the end of the year.
无掠这暴卵母蟹，还是讲咱今无掠这较细只这鳍啊，这些巡蟹类，后摆嘛是咱家己咧掠，所以这个产业要永续的话，我们必须要做一些保育的事情。
Conservationists hope that tagging the crustaceans will remind fishers to throw them back into the water, and that the tag itself will help them collect information vital to the crab's survival.
这样我们就可以知道说它这样洄游的路径，然后再去配合我们的海洋因子的资料，我们可以知道，那怎样的海洋因子是会影响它去移动的关键因素？这样。
Although catching these crabs can now result in fines of up to $5,000, Taiwan Fishing Agency hopes that local fishers won't be too crabby about the new rules. Leon Lien and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
Where can you find your favorite anime heroes, merchandise, performances, comics, and even a maid cafe all in one place? Harrell Hughes tells us more.
Artists, performers, VTubers, and cosplayers. They're all here for the Fancy Frontier Anime Convention. The 3-day event takes place in Taipei twice a year, bringing in large crowds of fans from both close to home and from abroad.
みんなすっごい親切で、ツイートとか見て会いに来てくれるんですよ。探しに来てくれて、アットホームで優しくて大好きです。
I'm from Spain, but I live in Japan. It's an amazing
place is like a mix of Japan and Europe, I think. It's a very, very interesting culture, and having so much fun here.
Hundreds of people lined up in the sun before the doors opened, and more came throughout the day. Someone cosplays their favorite anime characters, and others just to enjoy the fun. The focus of the event is on sharing culture, art, and performances.
女仆咖啡馆的文化的话，它其实是来自于英国那边开始流传的，然后一直渐渐的传到日本。那我们的话是比较偏向日本风的这样子。
Organizers are estimating 100,000 people will attend this weekend to buy merchandise, admire the cosplay, and even join in themselves.
The numbers attending the event dwindled in previous years because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But now restrictions have been lifted, and the summer is here. It's looking like the crowds are ready to return to Taipei's cosplay action once again. Justin Wu, Sam Hui, and Harrell Hughes in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
In sports, Taiwan threw a perfect game to defeat Canada at the Little League Baseball World Series taking place in the U.S. 3 pitchers combined to stop any Canadian batter taking a base even once in a 6-0 win. 12-year-old Fan Chen-jun was the pick of Taiwan's players, striking out 9 of the 11 batters he faced. His fastballs clocked at around 130 kilometers an hour. Fan also showed off his batting skills by hitting a 2-run home run in the 3rd inning. The win was the first perfect game in the Little League World Series since 2017 and only the 8th in the tournament's 76-year history. Taiwan now advances to face either Mexico or Japan, depending on the result of their game on Saturday. Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Erica Liu. Take care and see you next time.